So you guys take a look at the Q&A section. The way that this was going to work was Randy actually posted a fantastic article, a blog post about his experience with mentorship and coaching, and specifically related to his background in the military, which I think what he did a couple, he was like 6 years as a Black Hawk.
Yeah, a Black Hawk maintainer, which, I mean, that's how they refer to it in the Army, as a maintainer. And he described his scenario. In fact, I recommend you guys all go take a look at it. So it's Randy Rebman, REBMAN.com. So his post is out there, and it's a really well-written post. He's a terrific author. And actually, Fred is saying Randy might be able to connect now that the echo's cleared up, so we can send an invite over to him again. Let me go ahead and do that. You never know.
And so his background in the military and sort of what he was accustomed to in the military as far as mentorship and coaching is concerned, he was kind of relating it to like what his, post-military life is like, and his sort of experience in higher ed. And then also now that he's working on a I think it's an instructional design or e-learning certification right now through Oregon State, I believe.
Yes, he is. My daughter's alma mater.
Right. And thanks Kim for posting that link. And so it was interesting to sort of see like what his parallels are and sort of what his experience in the past is, and where things are headed now for him. And it's always just a great experience for us to be able to document or just get a peek into somebody's journey. And so that's one of the reasons why we came up with this particular broadcast. Since he can't be in, I am so happy to be able to ask Toddi these questions, because when Randy had first suggested this whole thing, the first person I thought of was Toddi, because Toddi had she is very familiar with mentorship. In fact, you had mentioned you were mentoring 4 people now.
Is just right? very, very informally.
Mentoring 4 people. And then also I remember listening to a podcast episode you did with, I can't remember his name, but I listened to the episode. It was fantastic. He was brilliant.
And his name is Randy as well.
Okay,
let
that's
me go back and find it. But he is a professional mentor. Actually, he has a platform for mentoring within the corporate world, and so I brought him on as a guest. And at the time, I was actually creating all the mentorship programs for an organization in Colorado Springs. It's called Peak Startup, which was geared towards startup businesses. And we were trying to, for a very nominal fee, because we wanted people to have skin in the game, we put together a series of interactions between them and some startup founders, giving them that real world experience for someone to be able to kind of walk them through the environments that they would normally encounter in the startup world, which is, it's quite difficult to navigate. And I'm excited. So I'm going to ask you these questions, the ones that I'd kind of pulled together for the both of you. And just my own background is I've never really had a mentor. I do have like a couple people in my life that have said that I mentored them. That wasn't really intentional, but I'm glad, because I had, just these great relationships with them, and I just loved helping them succeed. And that's kind of something that is all together. I kind of core to who I am. So, and so even now for me, like I have been thinking ever since like TLDC got started, I've thought about like, I kind of wish that I had sort of a mentor or somebody that I can, that I can go to help, sort of guide my journey as somebody trying to build this thing. Haven't found that yet, but just keep chugging away. But so that's my perspective on things. And so I'm going to be asking Toddi these questions with a lot of interest. And let's start with the first one. What's the difference between mentoring and coaching? So for me, a mentorship model is someone who kind of comes alongside you in an industry, or it might be a hobby or something in an area that you're really interested in, you have a curiosity in, to take you through the very finite details, some of the things that you're never going to encounter in a book, to provide guidance. And I definitely look at it as being a very different scenario from coaching. Coaching has an expectation that you're going to work on a very finite skill, that you're going to benchmark where you are and look for an improvement, right? I mean, it's not all that different from, if I go to an exercise coach and I expect that, my end result that I really want at the end is that I can lift, 150 pounds in a deadlift. That would be cool. That becomes a coaching scenario where I've defined a goal and I probably have a paid relationship with somebody where, we do check-ins or that person guides me in the right way to do something. But for me, a mentorship program is really kind of, it's definitely more informal. And it's somebody who is going to give you the nuances, and I think that's where it's really different. Is you're going to get the nuances of a business by having that mentor right alongside. And so, actually, if you read Randy's blog, he describes a really just like a perfect scenario there, where he was doing maintenance on a Black Hawk, I believe, and had done a procedure incorrectly and ended up having oil draining down all over. Well, the commander had said to him, you don't get any redos on this. Once these guys go up, they go up. You don't get to call that aircraft back. And so, that's the kind of scenario, especially when you're talking about life or death. And I worked in aviation as well, where, you want to ensure that somebody has that skill set. And as trainers, we talk about on-the-job training and core competencies and things that we expect somebody to be able to do. But we all make mistakes. Or we might do something, that we think is right and it's not necessarily right. So that's where the mentor comes in. As somebody to say, okay, have you thought about this? Or have you double checked that? The folks I'm working with right now, I've actually got one person that I've been coaching on how to deal with recruiters. You're not going to find that in a lot of books. Giving this person some guidance on, the best ways to negotiate. One other person said to me, I really enjoy teaching, but I want to look for areas where I might be able to make more money. And so, I think we all know in this field, if you get into more of the program management side of things, or, if you're doing a little bit more of the tech and the integrations, you're going to make a little bit more money than you would as an instructional designer. Kind of depends on the company. But so those are the kinds of things I think that you're going to get from somebody who has that experience in the industry and can come alongside. So
would you say that like basically coaching is more of a skills based?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you're definitely defining something that you want to achieve. And that might be, maybe I want to get really good with Photoshop, and I'm not great with, self-paced tutorials. And so I go to someone who's going to teach me on a screen in front of a room, and then I might learn better by actually doing, in a classroom. And I'm still doing, but, I've got a scenario where, there's a very well laid out curriculum or syllabus or something that I'm going to follow.
So I want everyone to know that I have a couple poll questions that are that are available right now for you guys to fill out. And there are two questions. Are you currently an instructional design mentor? And then the other one is, are you currently an instructional design mentee? And there are two that are mentoring, and then one that is a mentee. And now did that change? Oh yeah, most everybody is like is no on these things. So I do find that really, really interesting. I'm wondering, do you have to be like you were talking about the Photoshop thing? Mm-hmm. So a coach would be somebody that would say, okay, this is how you resize an image, and would show you directly.
Yeah, probably the person
a
you're
mentor
next
would
to.
say, and a mentee would say, go to LinkedIn Learning and you'll find. Is that how it would work?
Well, I think a mentor would give you some guidance on where to find what you're looking for. And in fact, I have a document created in Google Docs where I point people to places where they can find really good resources. I have some things that I've written on my own, and I throw those out there, but I point people on who to follow, if you're really interested in a particular subject. Because, we can't know everything. There are people out there that know way more than we do, but I feel like I am pretty well qualified in most cases to be able to say, this is a good person to follow. This is a good person to, maybe to even take their course or watch their YouTubes. I mean, there's some amazing learning to be done just in social media. And some for free and some is paid. Some is engaging with your networks. So those were also topics that Randy and I have been talking about, was engaging with your networks and having a plan for that. So,
and I'm wondering too. Also, this one's for the chat audience. If anybody out there is looking for a mentor now, if you're actually looking for one, because that question, I think it gets asked pretty much every month on TLDC. Like people, and then there are a select group of people that end up, kind of connecting.
Mm-hmm.
And they find mentors whenever that question does come up. So I am curious if you guys could just post in chat if you are looking for a mentor, just to kind of see what what it's like right now. And also that next part of it for me is, once you do decide, I want to approach this person to see if they'd be my mentor, which seems kind of trippy to me, but I guess that's just the way you do it. How do you establish like what the expectations are? Like what are both of you going to be able to kind of come out with as far as the relationship is concerned?
I mean, it can be informal, it can be structured. The program that we put together in Colorado Springs was a structured program, so we actually had feedback forms for the mentor and the mentee, so that they could evaluate, which is also a very important aspect of this, whether or not they were getting what they needed from the interactions. In the interactions that I've been having with the 4 people that I've been working with, as a kind of a cadence thing, I've been sending out an email to each of them like once a week, just to say, hey, how's it going? Is there anything I can help you with? And I've had all kinds of responses. It's like, if I thought that I was going to get a canned response from 4 people looking at instructional design, I've been very surprised. They all have different interests. So there's Randy. He's coming back. Yay!
Hello.
And we can hear you. We're so excited.
I'm going through my webcam now, so.
See, I told you it was going to work.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now I'm wondering if I even need to. You want me to keep on? Is this format? Should I just?
It totally
keep
works.
going with this format?
I think it's great.
Yeah. We
okay,
love
cool.
it.
So we talked about difference between mentoring and coaching and establishing expectations. Do you have anything to add to that, Randy? Like how you any of the expectations that you have within that relationship? How do you define those?
I mean, in some areas I've been kind of gray about that, and I think that's been kind of an issue when I haven't been totally clear. Am I echoing a little bit?
No.
Okay.
Totally
You're good.
Good. So I'm thinking about transitioning from teaching to instructional design and kind of going through that process right now and going through a degree program. And for a while, I wasn't sure if I was looking at instructional design in higher ed, or if I was looking at instructional design in the corporate business side. And I think when you had Devlin on, that's when I really started to see the real aha moment that there's a big difference between those two. And like working my portfolio and things like that, if I'm putting pieces in there and applying for a job in the corporate world, pieces that might work for higher ed probably isn't going to satisfy their requirements. So when I was looking for coaching, I had to be really specific, like what kind of community am I trying to go into? What are the areas I need to grow in? And for a long time, until just recently, I was really fuzzy on that. So that's a long answer to, I think the expectations have to be pretty clear.
But I think that's something that can kind of differentiate between coaching and mentoring, right? Because that you may need coaching in specific areas, but the mentor might be the person who tells you, these are areas where you want to have some additional development, or even just to say, hey, you've got a lot of skill set there. So, that's kind of, it can almost be an augmentative type of relationship.
Right. Yeah. And when, the COVID-19 kind of forced all of us who were teaching in higher ed and K through 12 too, to go online, I saw a big gap in my skill set, even though I was starting to take instructional design courses in a formal like micro-credentialing program. And so I knew that I needed to find some type of mentoring, and I did find somebody through some different personal learning networks. And then I was able to start actually getting that focused mentoring that he needed to kind of upskill, whether it was making videos or some of those things with my own instruction. And I think there's bleed over into instructional design within that mentoring, kind of what you were getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I want to, if I could, I'd like to get a little bit more detail on how you found that mentor, Randy, because, that's a big, huge question mark for me. Like, how does that work? It almost sounds like
right.
dating. It's like, is there like a Tinder for mentors or something? Like, how does that work?
That's a great question. And I think it's really situational, I think. Because I've had experiences where it was like job mentoring or higher education, in a graduate program. And that's a whole different realm of mentoring, trying to find, if you're a graduate student, trying to find a professor to work with. My situation was that I went into, TLDC, I went into a couple different other Slack groups, and then I found a Facebook, Instructional Design in Education, I think. It's the Facebook group. And there was a ID from ASU who started hosting his own office hours. And I don't know if people are familiar with Alex Lindsay. Alex Lindsay's office hours is kind of the one I think he kind of formed it off of. And so he would just invite teachers from ASU and other places just into on Zoom and send out a piece of content each week. And we would look at some connection to higher education, get together and discuss it. And maybe we read it or listened to it or watched a video. Sometimes it was just an excuse for us to get together and kind of talk about our practice. And so it was really kind of happenstance. It wasn't really planned. I knew that I needed some mentoring, and it just kind of fell on my lap through that group.
Now, can you talk about that, like how it compares to your experience in the military? Because that was more what your blog post about.
Yeah. Well, when I think of the military, I think Toddi was talking about that apprenticeship model, and maybe before we got cut off, and how that relates to kind of that situated learning approach. And you go through kind of you're just on the peripheral outside circle of that community, and you're trying to get closer and closer to that legitimate participation, if we're using the situated learning model. And with the military, it was like, I went through helicopter mechanic school, and I did some of the practices of a mechanic, and I got coaching or mentoring during that process by some of these senior instructors that were civilian and military. And they would use kind of a debriefing, the after action review, which I know a lot of businesses kind of adopt versions of that. And that was kind of to start preparing us. But by itself, that training wasn't enough. I mean, once we got to our units and we were working on disassembling the helicopters and putting back together, we were assigned on, really rudimentary tasks. And then gradually we were paired up with some more expert mechanics who have been there for a while. And slowly we became a little bit more confident and experts in that role as the tech task complexity got more. And then I think we started to build confidence, and then we in turn at some point became kind of the mentors a little bit. But there was always a very complex system of people I could go to. I mean, we were side by side with Raytheon Aerospace. So if I had a big problem, chances are there was somebody right next door who had probably seen that problem or had done something. So the system of support was built in, was pretty complex. And obviously a lot of organizations probably can't do that, but I think you could do something similar, whether it's like thinking about your personal learning network. And I think, Toddi, we talked about that a little bit, and just like maybe you have certain different layers of that in the same way that I kind of did in the military.
Interesting. And so just in the military, was that mentor relationship, was that just defined as soon as it started to happen? Did it say, okay, you are now going to be mentoring this, this person, and then, so that was hammered out? Versus like, and I wonder, like Toddi, if you could say like, how do you establish your mentoring relationships with people? Like, do people just say, won't you be my mentor, or something?
And they kind of do, actually, which is okay by me. I mean, I know I have a finite amount of time, but I also know what it was like to be new and know nothing. I mean, seriously, like nothing. So, and I had a mentor, and my mentor was at Raytheon, and I actually worked in the field support group for one of the elevated sensor suites, and the systems that were put in place, by the civilian groups that supported the military were really good, and the military itself had great systems as well. And I worked on that support side, but I felt okay because of what I was seeing within the industry and how people handled questions there, to be able to ask my own personal mentor, would you mentor me on this? Because I remember coming in thinking, like, I really don't know how to write a learning objective. I was a tech writer, and they said, please join our training group, and we need you. And I'm like, oh boy. But she sat me down with some really critical readings. That was one of the things she provided, and said, here's the section on creating terminal and enabling learning objectives. And by the way, here's Megar and all of his performance learning objective material. Go read this. And but I would never have found those things on my own. And so there was some self-study involved. But I called her kind of my spirit guide. Because she knew where to find that information. I actually, once in a while I've seen her here in New England, and I think it's kind of interesting to have a conversation with her, and I have, because I feel like there's not a lot I haven't touched now, but I would never have gotten here without her help.
Nice. Fred makes a great point here in chat. He's saying one thing about mentorship is that you can't force it. No. It's a natural relationship based on care. It takes personal investment and a desire to help others grow.
Yeah.
So, just across the board, you guys agree that's the way that it works, even in the military?
Yeah, I think even in the workplace too. I think you want to see somebody else succeed. At least that's my opinion. I mean, I've had people who kind of hoarded information too, and wouldn't tell me things. That happens.
So let's talk about, say, you've established kind of a mentor relationship. What if it doesn't work? How do you know? How do you exit? How do you know it's not what you want? Like, what are the strategies for being able to deal with that?
Randy?
I'm trying to think about that, because I was assigned people that were sort of like my pseudo mentors in the military, and there were definitely times that that relationship wasn't really working. I mean, it was kind of their style of leadership and communication style that just didn't really work that well. Like, they weren't somebody that I looked up to. And I think that was kind of, there's a little bit of how, Louise, you kind of alluded to it, kind of that, won't you be my mentor kind of like aspect to it that, I didn't feel that. And so that part was just kind of like, I was assigned that person. So that was difficult. I don't know how you get out of it if it's kind of forced on you. I don't know, Toddi, if you have anything on that in terms of your experiences, what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's in a non-work situation, it's pretty easy to just, kind of move on and say, okay, I'll find somebody that fits, like kind of my perception or, my personality better. In a workplace scenario, it's really difficult. I ended up actually not long ago having to mentor somebody in a business unit on the inner workings of the LMS, and I got the impression once in a while that, I was probably boring him to death. Even though I tried to make it somewhat interesting. But, I mean, you're going to have some relationships that work and some that don't. Actually, I saw an interesting comment in here from Kristen about accountability. And I think that's a piece of that, too. We talked a little bit about the coaching piece of it. There probably is a little bit more accountability there, because it might be a paid relationship or it might have some set expectations. But even in the mentorship relationships I have with people, I typically will say, hey, go check this out, and I'm going to check back in with you again next week and tell me what you think. Or I've even given people like a set of questions. Like, tell me which two of these methodologies you think is probably more appropriate to the workplace. Just hand them off the Blooms and the Gagneys and all this stuff, and say which resonates more with you. What's the best evaluation method? So
nice. And so Kristen was saying here, in your mentorships, do your mentees ever get to connect and be accountability buddies?
Oh, connect to each other?
Just referencing the idea of accountability.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's a really good point. So that's something I think would be relevant, is to set things up so that people could be accountability buddies. And thank you, Kristen, for that idea, because I've been wondering myself if I shouldn't be connecting the folks that I'm working with, if they wish to connect to others, but, allow them to kind of explore and discover together. Because, we learn through curiosity. I'm probably the two words I use the most in my language is curiosity and subject matter expert. But curiosity is a big deal, and you can be more curious, I think, with somebody else to kind of push you on.
How did that work for you, Randy? Because you, in the military, did you ever mentor more than one individual at the same time? And basically, did you team them together at all for support or anything like that?
We would have people that were on like small group activities where they'd be working on a task. They did have a counseling system where you actually had to kind of file a report, kind of a performance evaluation that kind of ties in with mentoring, I think. And it was kind of like, here's how you're doing, we've been coaching you on this. So there was some accountability there. I was just trying to think when you guys were talking, if there could be something built in, if you were mentoring somebody on, like, say, a portfolio or something where it's like, you're going to produce X amount of portfolio pieces and I'm going to check up on you.
Sure.
And is that more coaching? I don't know, because that's like very specific.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. Accountability is a good thing, though. It's nice to know that somebody expects something out of you, because it puts it at the top of your mind before you talk to them again.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I want to ask this question and Katie Ryan is in the audience, and I always love seeing her joining TLDC, and she keynoted, I think, our last conference. But she was asking about. She's asked, do people pay for mentors the same way they pay for coaches? And I actually had that question in my list. I'm wondering about that and whether or not you guys have been a part of any paid mentorship relationships.
Randy, do you?
I have not. The mentorship that I've gotten has been on the job, and then in graduate school, I was paying for a degree, and that was, I think there are some graduate programs, and the one guy that I took a course with at Arizona State had a very specific mentorship model in place, Paul Matsuda. And he's the first one that I heard of this situated learning perspective from. And that's, you're paying for a degree and hopefully getting a mentorship. And sometimes professors are really terrible at it, sometimes really good. So I think that's the one paid example I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think for me it would be like some of the classes that I've taken. That would be the only real paid engagement I had with anybody. My personal opinion on it is that if you're really looking for a mentorship relationship, that it probably isn't paid. I think it's fine to pay for coaching. I think it's the same as we pay for conferences, and we go to those conferences to learn from others. But the mentorship relationship is a little bit different. I just think it's much more personal. So, but that's just my own opinion. So
interesting, yeah, because I with that mentorship relationship, I did look that up when I was writing these questions, and I found some folks that were like, yeah, definitely, paid mentorship should be available. You're spending your time to be a part of this relationship, so absolutely. But then it also makes me wonder if it kind of obfuscates things, what was it? Who was it? Someone said it sort of reminds me of I forget the name of the producer, but he said that he was a musician, and and basically he said when money comes into the picture, then God walks out of the room. Yeah. And so I'm wondering if that can actually create problems in a mentor relationship, if you're actually like having to pay for it and you're not, and you have some type of a conflict about how your mentor is guiding you, if that could be a problem. But I don't know. I guess that's something that's TBD. I'd have to explore more about that.
Yeah, it's kind of a cultural thing too. I think in some cultures and work cultures, mentorship is expected. The way I look at it, I mean, lucky for me, I mean, I've always had a good job. I've always been paid. I get paid to do my job. So, I figure for me to, I joked about this recently, but it's kind of the truth. Someday I want to retire. And when I do, I'm hoping that there will be a cadre of people out there who can do good work. And so, why wouldn't I want to help develop those folks? I mean, we have some serious skill gaps in this country. I mean, this is something I could go on and on about. It's a big passion for me. But, if you see the need and someone has, the time and the bandwidth and they want to be mentored by you or you want to mentor them, then why not? And it doesn't have to be a huge engagement. It can be an email. It's fine. So.
Right. What do you look for what are the qualities of a good mentor?
Randy?
I would say especially if it's a job specific one or, academia or somebody that's successful and I think relatable, I think that, and approachable. I think, when I decided to study at Northern Arizona University, I'd already been accepted into a graduate program at ASU in Arizona State University. And it was just meeting one professor who just instantly super approachable, was like, we have a program that can, teach you with support. And I was like, I'm sold, and it was just that approachability factor was really big for me.
Yep. And experience too. You don't want to set your sights on working with a mentor that doesn't have the experience that you're specifically looking to tap into. Everybody has different experiences, which is, by the way, brings me to another point. You can have more than one mentor.
Right.
If I want to go become a PMP, I might find someone who can mentor me on, how I can get through that crazy, huge exam, or where I should put my focus as far as studies. If I want to learn about how to code, it's going to be maybe a different mentor.
Right.
So.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Toddi. What makes you a good mentor?
Me? I think that approachability thing might be part of it, and I love to talk, and I do love what I do, so I like to talk to others about what I do, and I always hope that some of the pitfalls that I've encountered I can help others avoid. Or, maybe some of the really cool successes that I've had, maybe I can share those and people can find some nugget in that too. But, yeah, I like to chat. It's all good. I'm kind of social.
Yeah. How about you, Randy? What do you think, having been a mentor in the past, what do you think made you better than maybe others?
I would agree with Toddi about the pitfall, kind of understanding those, but I think if it's a certain type of skill set or community, kind of knowing the different tasks that are appropriate for that person, that they're ready to take on maybe more responsibility at kind of a graduated level. And that's still hard for me. I was trying to kind of mentor some teachers and I felt like I pushed too much on their plate and it's something that I'm still struggling with.
Yeah. I can see that. And Katie says in chat, I think great mentors share solid advice, but also ask really good questions too. And I think, that's fantastic. Let me go ahead and ask a question that she had posted in the Q&A area. Do you have any resources for being a good mentor?
Not right off the top of my head. I know Randy has some really good ones. We have a huge list of resources in our shared document here. So, I have some that I'll have to go dig them out.
Yeah, I have some articles that I could pass on if anybody's looking for a little bit more, like article chapters and then some links. Just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share those.
Or if you send them to me, I'd be happy to put it in the show notes if there's something that can be shared. And I know in the emails that you guys were sending, there were a couple PDFs that you sent over, which I've sent over to my Kindle so that I can read them. But so just some basic resources. And Mark had followed up with that question. Do you have any resources for being a good coach? Is that anything that you guys ever run into? Not really on the coaching side of things?
I think most of the coaching I've ever been coached on doing was in the workplace. I became kind of a mid-level manager a few years ago, and my manager coached me on some of the things that I should be doing with my employees. So I'm sorry, the coughing is my chihuahua down here. So, but she would bring me in for sessions, one-on-one, and just say, hey, with your team, you need to be, doing this, and here's some things that we've observed, and can you, find out how we can motivate this person to do something different. So it's very much hands-on. So.
Nice. All right, let me follow up with a question that Mark is also asking. And I know, Toddi, you've been a part of these. I'm not sure if Randy has, but do you see value in a coaching or mentoring situation in a group setting, like a mastermind group facilitated by a mentor?
There we go. Toggle my mic off. Yes. So yeah, I've actually been part of some instructional design masterminds, and very recently I was part of a mastermind geared towards leadership, which I really enjoyed. And we had that same type of scenario where we had accountability assignments that we needed to complete before each meeting. This was on Zoom, and it was actually, after COVID started, and we were all working from home. I found a lot of value in getting the feedback from the other people in the mastermind. I just, and actually we had a very formalized mastermind in Colorado Springs that I belonged to that was mostly entrepreneurs and startups, but we would very distinctly put down one goal or one thing that we wanted to work on per week, and then revisit that the next week and be able to, talk about our progress or where things were with that. And it was good because you knew that, again, it's the accountability. You knew you were going to have to speak to it when you came in. And some of those masterminds were paid and some were unpaid. So again, like a mastermind is a different form of kind of that, coaching. But it can be either. It can be paid or unpaid. So
Can you give me a sample of what, like, one of those single things, like in an instructional design mastermind that you work on, like, collectively?
I know one of the things that I was looking at was intake forms. It was like super specific, but I was part of an instructional design mastermind, with all other IDs, and trying to figure out like what was the best way to structure an intake form, and then also triage what came in. And I got a lot of really good feedback from actually some of the people in our community here, but I did not really understand what pieces I needed to add to that intake to really be able to triage for the workflow coming into my department. So geeky, I know, but yeah.
Interesting. Randy, have you been part of a group mentorship program or a mastermind of some sort? I've heard about them so much, but I've never participated.
I'm not sure what a mastermind group is. If you could clarify that a little bit, because I'm not sure what those are.
Let's see. Well, I guess the one I'm thinking of, I know Sam Rogers was running one where I suspect he was kind of just guiding a group and collectively coming up with one objective, like on a regular basis, that was focused on, an industry specific, skill or process, and everyone would collectively, support one another, and he would guide it to come up with, sort of improvement.
Yeah.
So they have specific goals or objectives.
Yes.
Most of these in mind. Okay.
Yeah, most of them do. Simply because you're going round robin, at a mastermind to discuss where you are in the week. And I have actually been part of Sam's masterminds. So, in his case, he would give more of the floor to one person, so they knew in advance that they were going to be talking about something that was really a challenge, in their work or their professional life, or and because it's a kind of a closed group, it's what you hear in the group it stays in the group kind of thing. So if you have a problem or an amazing success, or you're talking about something you probably shouldn't talk about outside of work, it's locked down, and so there's some rules of the road with that. But yeah, now masterminds are great, but they also require that commitment, and the commitment kind of makes me think about something Randy and I talked about too, and it's asking yourself if you're ready, to engage in something like that, before you just jump in, to kind of do that self-assessment and say, am everyone ready for feedback? Do I have the time? Is my mental state, am I ready for that? That kind of thing too. So it's a whole,
especially with everything going on right now, like.
Yep.
having that headspace.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And if anybody knows of any masterminds that are currently running, go ahead and post them in the chat. I'd love to hear it, and maybe we can, throw that out there as a resource for folks. Just reflecting on it, I realized that I used to be in a music mastermind type of group where I just was a bunch of songwriters, and it sounds similar, where we would get together once a week and we would play what we came up with, like a new song, and then we'd give each other feedback. Which was a lot of fun, of course, and I could see that sort of a parallel to that. Okay, so I know we started late, but we're hitting the top of the hour. What I want to sort of finish up with is let's talk about maybe the most positive mentor relationships that you guys have had. And so, let's start with you, Toddi. Is there anybody in particular that stands out that you'd like to talk about, and how you benefited, and how it's helped you being in a mentor relationship with this person?
I've been fortunate to have a lot of mentors, but actually, so it's funny, I just answered this question in an interview setting recently. But the person I would look back and say was the most positive influence for me personally was a guy named John that I worked with at a software company, who was a PhD, just incredibly brilliant person who helped me understand the environment that I was working, because I was doing a lot of software testing, and the scenario that got set up was my coworker had to go on a maternity leave, and so they needed someone to do testing, and I was super uncomfortable in testing. That was not something that I did natively, and so he would come in, he would whiteboard things out for me that I should be looking for in the testing scenario, and so I learned a lot of really cool hacks. And it really boosted the heck out of my confidence, because I don't think up until that point I ever saw myself as an IT geek. And, like most of the work I do now in the corporate world is in the IT SaaS space. I mean, and now I'm actually on teams that are in change management, and solutions teams, and I throw out solutions that people have never heard of, and I'm like, all right, I am truly geeky. It's all good.
So John did it for you. That's awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah, a PhD who had time for me, and I didn't even have to ask. He's like, "Come in here, let me show you a few things about the testing scenario we're tossing you into." So all good.
I guess the thing that just stands out for me is I don't know how to exactly word it, but did you actually say? I mean, does he know that he mentored you? I guess my question.
I know I talked to him in the past, and I had said yes, that for certain that the things that he did in that setting really helped me move forward in my career. Yeah. And actually one of my favorite people to call out is my former coworker, Lisa Barnes, who I keep hoping will join us somewhere. And she was my mentor at Raytheon, and she was just amazing. And truly it would not be in this training and learning and development space at all if it wasn't for her. She gave me some hard pushes, but it was wonderful. So
nice. How about you, Randy? Let's hear your shout out to some mentors that have influenced you tremendously.
I'd say Frederica, my graduate school mentor, the one that I mentioned earlier. I think she modeled what being a good teacher looks like. I mean, not only in her classroom that I took from her, but also in her academic work. And so there was kind of that multiple levels of, I wanted to be a scholar like her. And then, being able to take her research and kind of apply it to my own classroom, and then be able to kind of present at a national conference with her in attendance was definitely one of the highlights of my graduate career. And, it was she kind of walked me through that process, through our meetings and everything. And I don't know if we ever actually said, "Hey, you're my mentor," but I think it was pretty apparent that, that was the relationship we had.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's the one thing I just wonder about. It's just because when I mentored somebody, I didn't know that I was mentoring that person until she posted it on LinkedIn. And, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I did help, her a lot. And so, and I've just wondered about that. When we talk about mentorship, if that relationship is always, if it's defined every time, but it doesn't sound like it is. It can just sort of it can be just not really vague, but sort of not, not labeled as a mentor-mentee relationship. And
very organic, I think. which is usually the best type of scenario.
Yeah, that's my friend from ASU that I've been sitting on his Zoom office hours. I mean, I asked him once, I was like, is your institution requiring this? He's like, no. And he's just setting aside this time and welcoming teachers to his office hours. And so it is very organic, with him too. And I was like, man, more colleges should be doing this with all the teachers trying to go online. Like, that would be such a great resource.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great point. Okay. Oops, you're still on mute there, Toddi. Are you guys taking mentors at all? I'm just to throw that out there.
I am.
Looking for mentees.
Yeah, I am. Actually, Fred said he was looking for a mentor. I said, contact me. So.
Yeah, and if anybody in chat, please post if at all that you're mentoring right now, or if you're looking for a mentor, feel free to post that in there, and we can spread the word. And with that, I think we should just wrap it up. Anything else you guys want to close out the broadcast with?
I'm glad we had this time to chat about though, because I've been seeing a lot of things on LinkedIn, about this exact subject. So I think it's timely for sure.
Yeah. I just want to say thanks to everybody for being patient with my audio issues.
Oh, it happens all the time.
It definitely happens. We did do a mentorship playlist on TLDC months ago. If you guys can go into the playlist area of tldc.com, you'll see it in there. It doesn't really cover what we're talking about here. It covers, like, what we did was we paired up, like, basically beginners with kind of advanced sort of folks, and just sort of talked about what that relationship would be like, how they would mentor or mentee together. And so you can find that on the TLDC website. Yeah. And with that, I'm going to close it out. Cool. Randy, Toddi, thank you so much for doing this. A lot of fun. I didn't expect to be on camera today, but cool, and yeah. So next week, I know we've got a couple sessions. I think we're doing the D&D L&D one next week, and some other stuff is going on. So that should
Dungeons and Dragons, is that?
Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons.
That's what I thought. So that must be Craig. Is that Craig?
No, not Craig. It's going to be Matt Pierce, and Christy Tucker are going to be on. But if Craig wants to be on, we could do that too. Anybody that's interested, we'd love to have you.
That's
all right,
cool.
You guys.
All right, thank you.
I'm going to let you close out the room, Toddi, okay?
All right, sounds good. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.